Good morning, Dan and Amy. So, Amy, report out yesterday that the Navy SEAL raid in Yemen that was designed to kill or capture Qasim al-Rimi, who's the leader of AQAP, Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, failed to get al-Rimi, and he issued a message. SEALs did knock out 14 Al-Qaeda fighters, and of course, we lost Navy SEAL and American hero Ryan Owens from Peoria, home state boy. al-Rimi released a message yesterday that military officials confirmed in terms of its authenticity, saying, "The fool of the White House got slapped at the beginning of his road in your lands." We'll see how much longer al-Rimi will be wandering around those lands. For more on national security matters and the media coverage of said matters, because our next guest is a military officer, career officer, but also now a member of the media in a sense. He's the Fox News strategic analyst. He is Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters. Colonel Peters, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning.
I'm sorry to disparage you by saying you're a member of the media, but I mean you are on Fox.
Look, I am. That's a fact.
Yeah.
If you're on board, you're on board.
Well, so Trump in Tampa yesterday suggesting that the media, the D.C. press corps, who he's really speaking about, has been a bit lax in covering terrorist attacks, not covering them at all. I think what he was trying to say is covering them with the scope and intensity they deserve. Do you think that's a fair criticism?
No, I think it's utterly unfair. The media gloms onto every terrorist attack, anything that looks like a terrorist attack. In fact, one of my frustrations has been over the years with all the media I do is that terrorism is so dominant in media coverage that we're not covering other issues. A classic example, the collapse of socialist Venezuela, the return of center-right governments in places like Argentina. We haven't even given due coverage, I don't think, to Ukraine. There's so much going on in the world, and it's all terrorism. And the media has already cross-checked every one of the events that the Team Trump said the media didn't cover. Every single one has been covered by the general media. I mean, it's a simple equation. Terrorism is hot. If it bleeds, it leads. Mm-hmm. And so the media, at the end of the day, it's about ratings. It's about listeners. It's about viewers. And terrorism gets the viewers. So obviously, terrorism is covered. So Team Trump needs to grow up and accept the fact that a free media is part of the American fabric, is an important check and balance. I mean, we were ferocious about criticizing Obama, and it's utterly unrealistic for Team Trump to come in and make some real beginner's errors and expect not to be criticized. I mean, this is a hypercritical environment, and the press's role is not to be a cheerleader for either political party. The press's role is to be intelligently and justly critical. Now, that can often lapse into cynicism. I understand that. The media comes in a lot of flavors. There are plenty of media outlets and pseudo-media outlets that I think are a disservice. But the attacks on the mainstream media in general, I think, are just exaggerated. I mean, where would we be without it? Where would we be without your show? Where would we be?
No, that's not a word.
Various voices. You got to have the other give the other guy a chance too.
That is a world in which no one would want to live. A world without our show. I concede your point.
But maybe Donald Trump's upset because he thought or perceived that the press during the Obama administration was a cheerleader for President Obama. Is that a possibility?
Well,
they're not for him.
I don't think they're thinking that deeply or strategically. I think President Trump, he is a narcissist, and he wants good coverage. And it's telling that the things that really get him aren't the hard news reports. What really gets to him are the Saturday Night Live sketches. And you just got to put your big boy pants on and deal with that satire. And by the way, I personally thought Saturday Night Live's coverage of Kellyanne Conway over the months, and now its coverage of Sean Spicer, was hilarious. And satire is important. It's there's sometimes they're going to make fun of your heroes, But to their credit, Saturday Night Live pretty much makes fun of everybody.
Well, let's talk a little bit about substantive moves that the Trump administration has made in the area of national security. So you've had Trump yesterday in Tampa, in addition to what we've already discussed. He did reiterate his commitment to rebuilding the military. I know there's a memo from General Mattis, Secretary of Defense Mattis, now circulating on that topic. We've had him move to impose new sanctions on Iran after they violated the pathway to nuclear weapons deal yet again. We've also had Carolyn Glick writing in the Jerusalem Post about the Trump administration properly ignoring the PLO in the Middle East as not a honest broker in a path towards peace in that region. So you do see some marked departures from the previous administration. What about those substantive moves that the Trump administration has made?
Well, it's a real mixed bag, and the Trump administration has tried to do some very positive things. I welcome support for Israel, a sensible support for Israel, of course. We must get tougher with Iran, but you got to think it through, and you got to be smart, and you don't want to be impetuous. Because I always tell people, let's get Iran. Okay, but think about the second, third, fourth order consequences, and when you pull one trigger, you have to be ready to pull all the triggers. So just my advice, if I could give one piece of advice to Team Trump, it would be think it through before you go public. So, and that applies in general. Now, General now Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, he is stellar. I mean, this man is a brilliant, true patriot. He's not a party animal, left or right. He's loyal to America. And so I see him as a beacon of solidity and common sense and depth of knowledge within the administration.
What about, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what about, since he's really in the crucible right now, what about General Flynn at Homeland Security?
Well, I've known Mike Flynn since 1985. He has certainly served his country well. He was a superb tactical officer and an operational officer. It's an open question whether he might not be out of his depth at this level. And I think one of the key problems is, I've known Mike, I've liked him. He doesn't understand the Russians. And the biggest foreign policy stumbling block this administration has is this peculiar man crush that President Trump has on Vladimir Putin. Putin is not our friend. He is hostile to the United States. He is our enemy because he has chosen to be our enemy. And he's humiliated two American presidents in a row. And he is the true master of the art of the deal. So when you enter into any kind of relationship with Vladimir Putin, you better be locked and cocked and on your guard because he is really, really good at what he does. So, your question was Mike Flynn. The answer would have to be, we'll see.
Do you think with Donald Trump's unfiltered rhetoric that he's going to get us into all kinds of disputes with foreign governments?
Well, I mean, whether you're a Trump supporter or not, I think we have to agree that it wasn't wise to just attack the Prime Minister of Australia. I mean, one of our closest allies, over a deal Obama made about 1,200 refugees. There are better ways to do this. You've got to, bind your allies closer. Don't drive them away. NATO, for instance, has been the most successful peacetime alliance in history. Why on earth would we want to wreck NATO? Vladimir Putin would certainly welcome it. He wants to wreck NATO. Even the attacks on Mexico are counterproductive because he doesn't know Mexico's history. We took over half of Mexico's territory from Mexico in 1848. We bullied Mexico over the years. The Mexicans are nationalistic. They're proud. It's a big country, not a small country. And so by saying publicly and repeatedly that Mexico is going to pay for the wall, President Trump has assured that Mexico will not pay one peso toward that wall. I mean, I want a president who's tough, who stands up for America. But I also want a president who thinks, who doesn't just use a shotgun, who uses a sniper rifle. And, the constant shotgun blasts against our allies are simply not productive. Look, allies can be frustrating, terribly frustrating. last night I was talking with a dear old military buddy of mine, and we agree, we both have had frustrations with NATO over the years. But at the end of the day, NATO is a huge bargain for the United States. The most successful peacetime alliance in history. It's given Europe its longest stretch of peace in all of European history back to the Roman era. Now, that's a pretty good deal. And I'll tell you this, to sum it up, peace is a lot cheaper than war. So I think the new administration will give them a chance. They're learning the ropes. They've got to understand that experience is not a dirty word. The interagency process of staffing matters. For instance, with the refugee executive order, had they simply run it by the experts within the key agencies, they could have avoided the embarrassment of writing something that's deeply troubled. I mean, we need immigration reform, deep immigration reform, but you got to get it right, and it's got to be lawful. So, I mean, they could have done a great job. Instead, it turned into a mess, and it was a gift to the administration's enemies because it was not done competently. I give them credit for wanting to do the right thing, but they screwed it up.
He is Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters, retired U.S. Army officer and author and strategic analyst for the Fox News Channel. Colonel Peters, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
Always great to speak with both of you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.